2 weeks from tonight, Fernando Mendoza is going to go number one overall in the NFL draft. And listen, we are so amped up for the NFL draft, the storylines. And listen, this is not one of those drafts where you're going to have someone like me say, this is the best draft ever. This is not one of these drafts where you're going to say, okay, this is the most intriguing draft we've ever seen. This is not a sexy draft in any way, shape, or form when it comes to quarterbacks and things that we've seen in prior years. But let me tell you what this draft is. Fascinating. And this draft has a lot of storylines that are going to impact the 2026 season in the National Football League and beyond. So, with the draft 2 weeks away, we are going to start today's sizzling edition of Schein Time with a piping hot Schein 9. Our 9 hottest, strongest takes for the NFL draft 2 weeks from tonight. Let's start with Fernando Mendoza. Look, he's going number one. But what doesn't get said enough, Fernando Mendoza is a franchise changer. And if you're a fan of the Raiders, you need to understand that you are getting a guy. You're getting a dude. This is not a bad lottery ticket where at the end of the day, you're only going to get a couple of bucks. You're hitting the jackpot, baby, in Vegas. Fernando Mendoza is going to be amazing. Fernando Mendoza is going to be epic. Fernando Mendoza won at the collegiate level. You look at what he did with Indiana football, just absolutely incredible. Played his best when it mattered the most. And this is a guy with a ton of experience where he did at Cal, takes Indiana to unprecedented heights that we've never seen before. I am obsessed with Mendoza as a pro. Now, what does that mean? You want to tell me that there have been better prospects through the years with the number one overall pick? We can have a conversation. You want to tell me you liked Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or Drake May better a couple of years ago? I would agree with you. But when I look at Fernando Mendoza, he is, to me, one of these three guys as a comp. He is either Jared Goff, or he's Kirk Cousins, or he's Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, to me, is a Hall of Famer. I've made the Matt Ryan Hall of Fame case before. And if that's what Fernando Mendoza turns out to be, he will win a championship for the Vegas Raiders. I firmly believe that. So when you look at Mendoza, I see a guy who steps in and plays. And I know that conversation has been, certainly curbed a little bit with Kirk Cousins and his news conference yesterday, and with Clint Kubiak's take and his comments that, he wants the veteran to be the opening week gunslinger for his football team. Let me tell you something. I really and truly believe that when you look at Mendoza, he's going to start sooner rather than later. I would start him week number one. I think he should be in position to be the rookie of the year and lead this team with Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty and Linderbaum when you look at what he does at the center position. So I think the Raiders with Clint Kubiak and Mendoza, that's going to be a winning lottery ticket. That's going to be unbelievable for Vegas. I think that there needs to be more jubilation. I think there needs to be more in terms of a word choice describing a franchise quarterback. There needs to be more in terms of celebration when it comes to Mendoza. I think he is going to absolutely fit. Tom Brady loves him. He's obviously involved. And I know that it's ordinary in terms of lack of buzz because everyone knows he's going to be the number one pick in the draft. Don't let that, if you're a Raiders fan, get in the way of joy and jubilation and celebration. This is one of the better days, 2 weeks from tonight, that the Raiders have had in a long time. When you look at the ability to go out and get someone like Fernando Mendoza. So I am really fired up here about Mendoza and what he brings to the table as a franchise quarterback for the Vegas Raiders. That is number one. Number two. The Jets absolutely need to take Reese at number 2 in the draft, and then they need to take Cooper at 16. And I want to start with Arvell Reese, who we spent a lot of time on yesterday on our sizzling edition of Schein Time. And I think that he is the next Micah Parsons. I firmly believe that. And I think at number 2, if they take Bailey, and there are a lot of smart people out there who like Bailey or have mocked Bailey to the Jets, Dan Jeremiah, who I love, Peter Schrager, who I love, I don't see it. I don't agree with it. Not Schrager and Jeremiah. Muji, if that ultimately is the pick for Gang Green. You have someone like Aaron Glenn employed as the coach because you believe in his defensive acumen and the ability to take someone like Reese and have him turn into someone like Micah Parsons, that is, to me, the comp, and I think it's fair. Talk to Matt Patricia. He absolutely loves him. He, of course, longtime Patriots defensive coordinator. He was with Ohio State this past year running the defense. I don't even think the Jets wait, right? You know Mendoza's going number one. Get the card to Roger Goodell 2 weeks in advance. Do it today. That, to me, is the right move for the Jets. And then at 16, I just think Omar Cooper is so tough and physical. I think there's a value. I think there's a need. You put him opposite of Garrett Wilson. Look, it's not written in stone that the Jets have to be that bad this year. I'm just saying. I'm not saying the playoff drought, which is the longest in the Big Four professional sports, is going to end. That's not how I feel. But the Jets need to be able to show progress. Glenn needs to show that he could win games in 2027. And I really think when it's all said and done, Cooper, who's tough, who's clutch, was the go-to guy for Fernando Mendoza at Indiana, made plays in big spots. I think with his physicality, with his hands, I think he's the perfect guy to be the number 2 wide receiver for the Jets for this season and for 2027 when we start talking about a new young quarterback and maybe, hopefully, for the long-suffering Jets fans, as if there's any other kind, then you start talking about that playoff drought finally being over for New York. Take number 3. The Tennessee Titans, right now on DraftKings, are the betting favorite for Jeremiah Love. And they should absolutely do it. Look, I think Jeremiah Love is the best pound-for-pound player in this draft outside of Fernando Mendoza. And I think that the comp that he gave me, by the way, when I talked to him on Radio Row, on my SiriusXM radio show in San Francisco at the Super Bowl, when he said he thinks he's an next Jahmyr Gibbs, I smiled because I feel the same way as well. I also think that if you're the Tennessee Titans, not only last year were you bad, you were nondescript, which is about as bad as it gets in terms of being brutal wins and loss-wise. And also, there's no Q rating. There's no buzz. Cam Ward was kind of neutered as a rookie and couldn't do anything. And I still think Cam Ward's going to be a terrific quarterback. I think Brian Daboll, the former Giants coach, will maximize him. This team doesn't have anyone around Cam Ward. Jeremiah Love can absolutely catch it out of the backfield. He can absolutely do an excellent job in terms of running with power and speed. Have you ever seen him get tackled from behind when he was playing for Notre Dame? Didn't happen because he's an absolute superstar and he's a stud. And I think that when you have someone like Jeremiah Love there, it matters. And look, what are you going to do? Take a number 2 or 3 defensive player in this draft as opposed to Love? You're the Tennessee Titans. If you're Mike Borgonzi, the general manager, you look at your draft board. You have holes everywhere. You don't settle for a position. You take the best player. Before anyone says, oh, Adam, remember Robert Saleh, defensive guy. Remember he drafted all those defensive guys early with the Jets. Well, how did that work out? And also, he just spent last year in San Francisco. And if there's one thing he should know at the end of the day, it's the fact that Christian McCaffrey was an MVP caliber player that changed everything for the San Francisco 49ers as that entire team was injured. So, yes, they should draft Jeremiah Love. And look, lower on the list, right, the Titans, I mentioned they're nondescript. You got to get some buzz. They're moving into a new stadium. You got to give fans reason to show up at the arena. You got to let them know that they can go out and buy a jersey. That matters in terms of the marketing department. Again, got to win. I think Jeremiah Love is the best pound-for-pound player in this draft. That's the pick. Now, take number 4. If the Titans don't take Love, and again, he right now, according to Vegas, that is the betting favorite that he goes number 4 to the Tennessee Titans, the Giants should pounce. And I do think if you look at names and possibilities here for the Giants with Love and Styles and Downs and a couple of offensive linemen, there are some great names here where I think the Giants, when it's all said and done, if you trust Harbaugh, and I do, Giants can't lose. I don't think there's any question about that. I'd prefer the top 3 on my list as opposed to the offensive tackles. But again, if Harbaugh wants to go meat and potatoes, we could have a discussion about it. I would take Love. I would take Styles. Those, to me, are the top 2 guys. But really, for the sake of this conversation and for, again, staying true to a board, I think Jeremiah Love on the Giants, if Tennessee passes on him, I think he'd be amazing. The Giants, like Tennessee, were not only bad, and have not only been bad for a decade, the Giants have been boring. If the Giants can have Jackson Dart, Jeremiah Love, Malik Neighbors, all of a sudden you're cooking. All of a sudden it's must-see TV. All of a sudden there's a reason to go to MetLife Stadium, which oftentimes was empty in the second half of games for the New York Football Giants last year. Drafting Jeremiah Love makes all the sense in the world. Played at Notre Dame, has the pedigree, and I don't want to hear dopey comparisons. It's like apples to Oldsmobiles, not even apples to oranges. It's not even in the fruits category. I don't want to hear this is like Saquon Barkley in 2018. That was a joke. That was part of the Dave Gettleman error, E-R-R-O-R, and not E-R-A. I mean, Gettleman was a special blend of arrogant and ignorant. I mean, he had no idea what the hell he was doing. They took Saquon Barkley at 2 instead of quarterbacks or Quentin Nelson. I mean, that's absurd. Don't even make that comparison. It's a different kind of draft this year, right? It's a different draft where you can look at it objectively like we are and say, all right, you have a middle linebacker, you have a safety, you have a running back who are 3 of the 5 best players in this draft. Normally, those are positions where you don't, at the end of the day, draft them that high. But it's a different, weird, odd kind of year when it comes to the prospects that'll be drafted in the first round, in the top 5, in the top 10, 2 weeks from tonight. So I think for the Giants, Love makes a ton of sense. Styles would be my next. I think Downs makes a ton of sense. Tackles, I can wrap my brain around, but I would certainly take Jeremiah Love. If the Tennessee Titans don't pounce on him, I would absolutely grab him if I'm the New York Football Giants. When it comes to Rueben Bane, I'm not worried about his arm length, okay? Now, listen, we could talk about big arms, long arms, short arms, alligator arms, arms when I take the Schein Time crew out for dinner and, our producer, Rich, doesn't reach for the check. Everyone's got different arms and different approaches, right? I think when it comes to Rueben Bane, at the end of the day, watch the games. Watch the games when it matters. Take a look at what he did at the U, how dominant he was, how tough he was, how he stops the run, how physical he is, how he makes plays in big spots, how he's a heart and soul of a football team that had swagger and was dominant this past year on the collegiate level. If I'm Washington, if I'm New Orleans most especially, if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm making that pick with Rueben Bane. I am not worried about what he measures with his arms at the scouting combine. Have you ever watched an NFL game, see a productive player and say to your buddy, man, I'm curious how my fantasy team is doing. I'm fascinated to know how my bets are doing. I want to get a score from around the NFC, and I wonder how long that guy's arms are. It doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. It's just conversation during the draft process, which, frankly, is nothing more than hot air and chatter. So I think when it comes to Rueben Bane and his arms, at the end of the day, I just think when it's all said and done, it's a topic. It's not a real thing. It's like Bigfoot. It's a myth, right? Like it's just, you've heard the rumors. I don't know if it actually exists. So when it comes to Rueben Bane, I'm not worried here about how long his arms are. It'd also be nice if our executive producer, Rich, would pick up the check when we go out for dinner. Number 6, if the Dallas Cowboys somehow get Caleb Downs, my goodness, I'm just telling you, okay? That Friday, if this happens, the Friday after the draft, you're going to have to hose me down before I step into the Schein Time studio, because I am going to be piping hot with takes on how the Dallas Cowboys just got an A++ draft and the Dallas Cowboys are going to win the NFC East. I'm just telling you, you are not going to be able to slow me down. It'll be a freight train of takes. Caleb Downs is perfect. And here's the one guy, and I've mentioned Love, and I've mentioned Styles, I mentioned Downs, and they play positions that historically, normally don't go high in the draft. He's the one guy, I think, on history and precedent, I don't agree with it, I could see him falling out of the top 10. Love is going high in the draft. I think the lowest Jeremiah Love goes would be Washington. I think he'll either go 4, 5, or Washington. Simple as that. I think Styles, who again, middle linebackers, sideline to sideline tacklers, don't normally go high in the draft. I think he's absolutely a lock to go in the top 10. Everything goes wrong, he goes to the Cincinnati Bengals. Downs is the one that fascinates me because Kyle Hamilton, who is a star and a stud and a difference maker and a missile when you look at it for the Baltimore Ravens, who I loved in the draft process a few years ago, he fell out of the top 10. You have to go all the way back to our friend Scott Pioli, Chiefs, Eric Berry, to see a safety go this high in the draft. Caleb Downs, to me, is an absolute no-brainer selection. I would take him, consider him if I'm the Giants. I think he'd be great for the Cincinnati Bengals. You know, they just brought in, via free agency, a whole bunch of safeties. I'm not even worried about that. But when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, and say what you want about Jerry Jones, I've said it. Say what you want about Brian Schottenheimer. This team does an excellent job historically when it comes to drafting. Stephen Jones is outstanding. Will McClay is outstanding. The Cowboys, and they're always smart. They're calculated. They draft a lot of offensive linemen. They don't reach for players. They draft solid defensive players. They grade incredibly well on day one, on day two. They have depth in drafts. They know what they're doing. Caleb Downs would be the steal of the draft. And I'll tell you, if you start perusing and looking at some of the respected mock drafts, our friend Peter Schrager, there is this theory out there that Downs could be there for the Dallas Cowboys with that 12th overall pick. I wouldn't even be surprised if Downs fell out of, let's say, the top 9, if Dallas started to get rightfully a little antsy. Jerry historically doesn't trade up. Cowboys don't trade up. Maybe they move up a slot or 2 so they can go out and get this unbelievable ball player from Ohio State. That, to me, would be everything for the Dallas Cowboys. And if you're a Cowboys fan, you know, normally you're always used to hype and hyperbole. There would be no way you can overdo it on a reaction if Caleb Downs was a selection of the Dallas Cowboys. Number 7, the Chiefs getting a receiver for our guy Patrick Mahomes would be spicy. Now, conventional wisdom, I would think, is that the Chiefs take an offensive lineman, Chiefs take the best player on the board, Chiefs trade down, not going to take a running back anymore because they signed Kenneth Walker. I think Kansas City taking a wide receiver is a pretty fascinating development. And I'll give our friend Peter Schrager from ESPN, I'll give him some props on this. He slotted Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State to this football team, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that if you look at Tate, who I love, from Ohio State, he to me is the best receiver in this draft class. It's not crazy if he gets past Cleveland that he's going to be there for the Kansas City Chiefs. And if Kansas City somehow gets the number 1 wide receiver in this draft, I mean, 31 other teams and fan bases are going to throw up in their mouth. I mean, this is like when the fastest player in the draft, the X-Man, ultimately, thanks to a trade with the Buffalo Bills, ended up going to Patrick Mahomes, and you knew that this was going to be something that would help them win and win a Super Bowl and win big games. If they somehow get someone like Tate, this would be unbelievable. And that would be remarkable. I also wouldn't rule out anyone here. I mean, we could talk about Concepcion. Tyson has been compared to Steph Diggs. I think that Lemon from USC makes a lot of sense. He, to me, is a clone of Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Kansas City taking that kind of player, and it's a luxury pick. But again, here's the luxury. You have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I mean, they'll figure it out at some point this year or next year. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's why I even mentioned Tyson, who Schrager mocked to Kansas City. There are injury concerns with Tyson. That's why he's kind of all over the board. If it's the Chiefs, you could almost keep him bubble wrap for a minute while Mahomes gets ready. Boy, that would be something if Kansas City took a wide receiver, 7 overall. Number 8, Ty Simpson cannot be a first-rounder. Our friend Dan Brugler from The Athletic, I talked to him yesterday on my SiriusXM radio show. He had him ranked as his 42nd player in the draft. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? I'm going to give you a hot take within the take. I have Garrett Nussmeier as my number 2 quarterback in this draft. It's Mendoza, draw a line, then Nussmeier would be next on the list. I really don't like Ty Simpson. You want to tell me he's third or fourth as a quarterback and he's a second or third round pick? You know, Carson Beck would be in that category for me as well. I mean, that's where I put Ty Simpson. I don't want to hear any Mendoza-Simpson comparison. I don't want to hear Simpson going in the first round. Think about some of these quarterback-needy teams, right? The Jets can't take him. He's not better than Geno Smith. You're not going to take Ty Simpson and, you know, all of a sudden with his 15 starts in Alabama and played terribly down the stretch last year, you know, he's not going to take you out of the quarterback business in 2027. You know, let's say Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back. He is. Let's say he doesn't. I mean, he's not at the end of the day going to be better than Will Howard. I would take Will Howard over him. I would take in Cleveland Shedeur Sanders over him. Arizona needs a young quarterback. If you're LaFleur, first time getting a head coaching job, what are you going to do? Hit your wagon to Ty Simpson? If you don't win over the next 2-3 years, you're going to be the ex-head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. They hire coaches to fire coaches in Arizona. And the cupboard's not bare there when you look at Arizona. So I am not a fan of Ty Simpson. That has been documented. I don't think he's even close to being a first-round pick. If you want to stress the talent and you view him as a backup fringe starter, you know, round 2, round 3, let's have a conversation about it. That's where he should go. But a first-rounder, please, under no circumstance. And let me give you take number 9. And I thought about this. The Rams could absolutely take a wide receiver. Rams have that 13th pick. Remember, they traded their second first-round pick in the trade with Kansas City to get the superstar corner, which was incredible. And that was, you know, the move of the offseason via trade by Les Snead and Sean McVay. And I wouldn't be surprised when you consider everything ongoing with Puka Nacua, when you consider they, for a moment, shopped Devontae Adams, who's in the last year of his contract. He's 34 years old. Matthew Stafford, back for one more year, maybe 2. The goal is either Super Bowl or bust. Lemon from USC doesn't even have to move. You know, I think that getting someone who's the next Amon-Ra St. Brown makes a lot of sense. I don't think Tate would be there, but he would be a no-brainer. Someone like Lemon would be a terrific, tremendous selection, Mekhi Lemon out of USC, for Les Snead and for the LA Rams. So that's what I would look at if I was a fan here of Los Angeles. Man, we've got the draft in 2 weeks. I am so amped. I'm so fired up. It is not the sexiest draft of all time, but in terms of drama and intrigue and takes and players, man, I can't wait to the NFL draft. It's a holiday. It's the Super Bowl. It's unbelievable. I can't wait. I'm sure you guys will have a great reaction to our sizzling Schein 9 for the NFL draft 2 weeks from tonight.